Hi, this is Judy Sarden, and today I wanted to talk to you about teaching your kids to read in a homeschool setting. And really, this applies to anyone whose kids are learning how to read. And this is going to be a short video where I'm going to explain to you how not all kids learn on the school's schedule and how that's okay. Okay, so just an anecdotal story. My son started off, he went to Montessori school before I homeschooled, and he started off an early reader. And so, when he was 4 years old, he was reading really well at the Montessori school. And something happened between ages 4 and 6, and he seriously regressed. And at some point, we found out that he had convergence inefficiency, meaning instead of, if you hold your finger here, you see one, but as you move it close to you, you start seeing double vision. Well, he saw that kind of at the length that you would, at the, where you would typically put a book. So we had to go through vision therapy to correct the conversion inefficiency. However, at this point, he hated reading and didn't want it to have anything to do with reading. So if you were in a school setting, that would have been a major problem because he could read, but he was a very slow reader. His comprehension was high, but his rate of calling out words was very low because he was reading double. And he could still read it, but I actually had him evaluated at the local school, and they wanted to put him back a year not because of his comprehension, but because he didn't call out however many words they needed him to call out in a 3-minute time while reading a list. And so, that if your kids are in school and you're being told that they're behind in reading, what does that mean? And so for my son, it simply meant that he could not call out words fast enough. That was it. So the awesome thing about being able to homeschool was that I was able to allow him to read at his own pace. And any studies that you read will point out to you that, it's developmentally inappropriate for a lot of kids. I mean, some kids are reading at age 3 and they're fine, but there's a bell curve, and people need to understand everybody's not going to read at the same time, and not everybody's going to read at the same pace. I practiced law for 20 years. I was one of those kids who was reading early. I was reading at a college level by the time I was in 5th grade. My kids are not that person, and that's okay. And it's taken me a really long time to embrace that and be okay with it. My kids don't love reading. I love reading. I'm a voracious reader, always have been. My kids are not. They don't want it. And I've finally come to the point where I'm okay with that. And not every kid's going to learn to read at the same pace. Not every kid's going to learn to read. So here's the advice that I have for people whose kids are struggling reading, or parents who are at home. Their kids are in a public school, or even they're at home and they're not reading at the on level. My advice to you is to keep working on it. And at some point, if you keep working on it, most kids, unless there is a serious developmental issue, at which point you get the issue, you deal with the issue. Unless there's a serious developmental issue, most kids are going to learn to read between ages 7 and 12 to 13. But you have to keep working on it. And when I say working on it, these are the strategies that I use to help my kids, particularly my son, to read. I found books that he wanted to read. And so at first, he loves airplanes and tanks and, military spy stuff, kind of the typical boy stuff. Boys typically like nonfiction. And, if you've got a boy in school and you're forcing him to read, novels, he just very well might not be interested in it. And so if you've got a reluctant reader, help them find something that is interesting to them. So I bought my son a bunch of Usborne books, and I bought one on tanks, on helicopters, on military spies, and all the stuff that he likes. And for the longest time, all he would do was pick the book up and flip and look at the pictures. But that was okay because he would go to the books every day and flip through the pictures. And eventually, at some point, he decided he wanted to understand what he was looking at. And so he would start reading maybe just the caption. And then eventually he wanted more. And so over time, he actually read those books from, front to back, because he would love to come and tell me what he was reading and what he was learning. And he did that by himself. I simply provided him materials that he loved and that he wanted to read and that he wanted to know about. I did not give him, some book that they would require him to read in school, because I knew that would be pain. That would be pain. He would associate reading with pain. So I didn't make him read those books. And this is how I got him interested in reading on his own. After that, and then we kind of moved to, and it's because it's not that he couldn't read. It was just that he was slow and he just didn't want to because it was difficult. So we moved from there to, let's start reading some of the skinny chapter books where the chapters are, this is the mud. Let's see, I can't even remember off the top of the head. It's a little boy with a dog. So we started reading those kind of books, and we started off really slowly. He would read a page, I would read a page. Then we moved on to he would read a chapter, I would read 2 chapters, and then we slowed down to, then it expanded to he would read a chapter, I would read 1 chapter, and the next thing you know, he could tackle all those books by himself, 1 chapter a day. And again, it was about a boy and his dog. We had a dog. It was a big dog. We had a big dog. So it was stuff that he could relate to and that he enjoyed reading. And every step of the way with my reluctant reader, I never made him read the kinds of books that they would be required to read in school. It was always something that piqued his interest. And so, let's fast forward to he's 12 now. And, we would read it once we finally worked our way up to the 250 page, 300 page chapter books. And again, all of these are on grade level, or maybe when we started, they were a little under, just to make it easy for him while we were working through the vision issues. But, after we kind of got through the vision issues, everything was always on grade level, but it was something that he was interested in. And so, when we started the big books, he started a series called Wings of Fire. It's about dragons, and it's a world of dragons. And so he loves fantasy and things like that. And it was a series, so I knew we could get 1 book and we'd have 10 more books to go through if he really liked it. So I recommend finding a series. If you've got a reluctant reader, find a series that they like, so you don't have to start searching for the next book when they finish it. I mean, the series, Wings of Fire series, has truly given us like a year and a half of reading material, because I'll stick some other books in there in between books that I want him to read. So he might read a couple of those, then I'll stick a book in there that he really doesn't want to read, but he knows if he gets through it, he can get to the next Wings of Fire book. So with those books, they're about 300 pages. We started off the same way. He would read a chapter, I would read 2 chapters. Then by the time we got to the 3rd book, he was reading 1 chapter, I was reading 1 chapter. And by the time we got to the 5th book, he's reading all the entire book by himself, chapter a day, even like the 25-page chapters. So that's where we are now. And he's 12, he's going to 7th grade, and he can read anything I give him. And so I still allow him to read mostly the books that he wants to read. And, I can skim through them real fast because I'm a very fast reader, and we can still have discussions. I can still have him write, report. I can have him write, analyze, do whatever it is that he would do with the typical school assigned book, but he can do it with the books that he likes. And so at 7, he's going to 7th grade now. So I'm starting to put in some of those books that he would be required to read in school. But again, reading should be for pleasure, and forcing someone, I know at the 5th grade here where I live, they have to read a complete book every other week. So two full books a month. They have to write a report and things like that. To me, that doesn't teach a love of reading. It makes reading a chore. And so if you've got a reluctant reader, don't make reading a chore. But what you do is you keep working on it, and you find creative ways to help your child to read and to find pleasure in reading. And so that's just, I hope this is helpful for those of you who are struggling with kids who are not loving to read, who are slow at reading. You know, my son really didn't pick up reading, like just take off, until he was 11. And so if he were in the schools, he would have been in a special class, he would have been told he was behind, he would have been told he was slow. All this stuff would have been in his mind, and he would have hated reading even more. But what homeschooling allowed me to do was to allow him to take his time to read what he wanted to read. And, you know, he doesn't love reading, but, you know, he'll get up in the morning, go pick his book up because he knows he's got to read before he can do other stuff that he wants to do. And, you know, video games. Okay, you want to play an hour of video games? That's fine. That's 2 chapters in a book. And so, you know, it's he gets it done, and it's not pain anymore. And in fact, he actually enjoys his little books. And so even though he doesn't technically really want to take the time out to read, at least he enjoys what he reads. And even when I make him read the books he doesn't want to read, he can find some pleasure in them. I hear him chuckling even though he tries to hide it from me, you know, when he's reading some of the books. So that's just my advice to any of you who are struggling with your kids. And I hope this is helpful. Post in the comments below if you have any stories that you want to share, because I really think it's important for moms to know, you know, don't stress out if your kid isn't on level. Just keep working at it. Make sure there's not a developmental issue. We had a vision issue. We did get that taken care of. Once you've had that taken care of, just keep working on it. Take a deep breath. Don't get frustrated. Don't frustrate your kid. If you keep working on it, they will learn to read, and it'll be okay. All right, see you next time.